Welcome back, everybody. I'm very pleased now to introduce Emma MacDonald, and Emma is the research assistant on the project Reimagining Assessment and Feedback for Student Success, and she's also a Masters by Research student at ATU. And Emma is now going to talk to us about the project Reimagining Assessment and Feedback for Student Success. Thank you, Emma.
Thanks a million, Deirdre. So I'll just get this up here. So hello everyone and welcome. So as Deirdre was saying, I'm Emma MacDonald and I'm the research assistant on the Reimagining Assessment project. So the first thing I'm going to do is just give a bit of a background about the project itself. So this project is supported by the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning under the SATL Fund. And it's a collaborative project between the Heads Teaching and Learning in Galway, Sligo and Donegal. So Dr. Karina Ginty, Dr. Niamh Plunkett and Gavin Clinch in Sligo and Dr. Deirdre McClay in Donegal. So what you see here is phase 1 and phase 2. So this will be academic year 2021 to 2022 and this year now 22 to 23. So there's been 6 programs involved in the study. So in phase 1, it was the law and criminal justice in Donegal, sociology and politics in Sligo, sorry, the typo there, and the medical science in Galway, Mayo. This year now, and what will be the focus of this presentation is the construction contracts management in Donegal, the occupational safety and health in Sligo, which is also another typo. I will correct that when I upload the slides, and then the quality for industry in Galway, Mayo. Then just the project team. So in phase 1, we had Dr. Susan MacDonald and Maura Hannafy in Sligo, Dr. Mary McGrath and Eleanor Rainsford in Galway, Mayo, and Dr. Rona Heverin in Donegal. And this year, and they're sitting right in front of me, we have Bláthnaid McGrath and Mary Hannon from Sligo, so that's on the Occupational Safety and Health Programme. Dr. Trish O'Connell, Marilla Keating and Ija Kelly from the Quality for Industry here in Galway, Mayo, and Eleanor Diver and Emma Coyle from the Construction Contracts Management in Donegal. Just a bit of overview of the research itself. So one of the first things we did was conducted an audit and review of the current assessment strategies being used on each of the programs. We carried out a questionnaire with both students and academic staff on each of the programs about their experience with assessment, feedback and academic integrity. Conducted a focus group session with students from each program. So there was 3 of those sessions. We held 2 showcasing events, one in Sligo and one in Donegal, with the academic leads from each of the programs. And then there was a continuation of the assessment masterclass series, and then I'll just give a little overview of upcoming events as well. So the audit and review process. So the purpose of this really was to kind of create one place for the different assessment types used on each of the programs. So what we asked was that the academic leads would share this with their colleagues, and thanks to both the leads and the academic staff on each of the programs for putting in their assessment details. And it just gives, I suppose, a holistic view of all the different types of assessments being used on each stage of the program. And I think it was just a good starting point to kind of see where each program was at. Then into the questionnaires, and I'm going to go through in detail the kind of preliminary findings from each of the questionnaires. These will be further analysed over the summer, and there'll be a lot of comparisons drawn. So what this is now is just kind of the raw data and what is coming through from it. So with the student questionnaire, there was 65 responses from across the programs, which was quite a good number because some of the courses are actually quite small. So this was a really great number. There's a great percentage from each of the programs. And similarly with the academic staff, the 23 responses that did cover nearly the majority of the academic staff on each of the programs. So it's great to have the input from everyone there. So then just a little overview of the topics. So the first kind of section of the questionnaire was about the participants' information. Then the second area, the bulk of it was about assessment. So the different varieties of assessment, the timing, the overall experience. Then it moved on to the feedback. So the benefits, drawbacks, different methods of feedbacks, formative assessment activities, that was another section within it, authentic assessment, and then academic integrity. So we kind of looked at the understanding, the communication of academic integrity and different resources. So I'll just give a bit of an overview of the student questionnaire. So this is the participants' information itself. So just the breakdown of the program of study, gender, age range. So it just kind of gives us an insight into who the students are. Then we looked at the variety of assessments. So the students were asked, have you encountered a variety of assessments on your program? And all answered yes. So they answered that they had encountered a good variety. So then we asked, are you satisfied with the variety of assessments? So what you see here then is that there's 53 that said they were satisfied and 12 said they weren't satisfied. So then I just broke that down into reasons for being satisfied and reasons for not being satisfied. So for the purpose of this, I've just taken kind of the general themes that were coming through. So the reasons for being satisfied: good variety, lots of different forms of assessments used. You learn a lot about different things that can be carried out over into the workplace, builds confidence for future working life. Variety of assessment types used gives each student a chance, depending on their different learning or their different ways of learning, understanding, and ways of taking in information. They are creative and give students the chance to develop a good range of skills, helps take the pressure off final exams, and there's a good variety of theory and practical. And then the reasons that came through for not being satisfied with the range of assessments were there's too many assessments around the same time, not enough information given about assessment at times, would like more non-graded for MCQs for revision. Some can be time consuming and take away from other modules, and not a fan of final exams as they require learning large amounts of information. So then we kind of focused on the timing of assessments. So they were asked, are they satisfied with the timing of assessments? And as you see here, there's 46 are saying that they are, and 19 are saying that they aren't. So we just asked there for suggestions for how this could be improved. So this is the themes that were coming through, that they need to be more spread out, more marks allocated to more time-consuming tasks, better structure for assessments and timing, more assessments closer to the time of learning information, and modules in the same semester could coordinate submission dates to ensure students don't become overwhelmed with too many assessments due at the same time. Then this is just a snapshot from one of the questions asked on it. So it just looked at the overall assessment experience. So what we did is we created a list of statements, and then students could decide whether they disagree or strongly disagree up to whether they strongly agree. So you can just see here on the slide, I suppose the percentage of who strongly disagrees and strongly agrees. So when analysing this, we'll get a further breakdown of the numbers for this, and you know, at this you can just see it visually, but it'd be great to see the breakdown of the numbers. On to then the satisfaction with assessment types. Now this might be quite hard to see, but these slides will all be published on Digital Ed after the conference. If you want, you can zoom in and have a proper look at it. But the question that was asked was, how satisfied are you that these different assessment types assess your knowledge of a subject or module? So it's very dissatisfied over to the left with the red, and then very satisfied over in the blue side. So it just gives an insight into what students feel helps or assesses their knowledge. And it'll be interesting now when we look at the staff questionnaire as well. We asked the exact same question as to the academic staff to see what assessments do they feel are satisfactory in assessing students. So we'll have these comparisons with the students and staff because some of the questions are quite similar, which is great. And then we moved on to the feedback section. So they were asked, do you think receiving feedback regularly enhances your learning experience? So 63 for yes and 2 for no. So then we asked a range of questions about feedback, but these are just what I've taken from the questionnaire for the purpose of this presentation. So we asked them about the different types of feedback they've received. So they would select however many they wanted, but just to get an idea of what different types of feedback methods are being used more frequently. So as you can see in this example here, the written individual feedback, so 55 of the participants said that they'd received that kind of feedback, the verbal individual. So there seems to be a good spread of the different type methods that are used. Then we asked about the timing of feedback, so how frequently or how quickly students receive feedback. And as you can see here, the kind of bulk of it kind of falls in between kind of 1 to 3 weeks there. And there's a few within a week. So that's great. But the majority kind of fall within that 2 to 3 week kind of period. So then we went on and asked why did they think that feedback would enhance learning? So the reasons given for this were that it helps to learn from mistakes and make changes for improvement, or changes to improve future assessments, gives an insight into where you are regarding to your learning, helps to understand the gap in your knowledge, increases your ability to learn, helps to improve your work using others' perspectives, and constructive feedback is invaluable in the learning process. We asked then, were there any drawbacks to receiving feedback? And a couple came through. So what came through with this was it can sometimes be given too late. The communication between the student and lecturer, if the student is unsure of the feedback they get, that they won't ask for clearer guidance. Sometimes it can feel too generic, and that came through quite often as well, with just the clarity maybe of the feedback itself, and maybe more, I suppose, more individual feedback will kind of take away from the genericness. It can sometimes be taken too personally, it can knock your confidence, and can often be all negative. Then we asked, what could we do to improve the feedback cycle? So some of the suggestions that came through from this were incorporate more positive feedback, more individual feedback, more verbal feedback, try to give feedback before giving another task or assessment that is similar, keep feedback clear and easy to understand, and more written feedback to be able to refer back to. The next section then that we looked at was authentic assessment. So just on the screen here is kind of the definition that we gave in the survey, just to kind of give an idea. So authentic assessment is a form of assessment which involves students conducting real world tasks in meaningful context. So then we asked, had students encountered any assessments that they felt were authentic in nature? So as you can see here, 47 of the respondents said that they had, and 18 said that they hadn't. We then asked to give examples of the different types of authentic assessments that they may have encountered. And what I've done here is just pulled from the data the kind of main ones that were coming up. There was a few more that will be, I suppose, analysed later in the data collection stage, but these were the ones that were continuously reappearing. So there's the inquiry-based learning, the risk and safety assessments, manual handling, mock interviews, role play, presentations, group work assessments, case studies, work placement, assessments using different softwares, for example, Microsoft Project and PowerPoint, research projects, guest lectures, and scenario-based assessments. The next topic we moved on to then was the academic integrity. And I suppose for myself, this is the most one that I found very interesting to go through the data on. So the first kind of question posed was, do you feel that you have a clear understanding and know your responsibilities regarding academic integrity? The answer to this was 43 out of the 65 were yes, 22 were no. And then, in your opinion, do you feel that students have a clear understanding of what is expected of them in terms of academic integrity? And 34 for yes, and 31 for no. And on my next slides now, I've done this over 2 slides because I think it's quite important. But then they were asked in their own words, please describe what you believe the term academic integrity means and discuss your understanding of the terms. So I think there was nearly every answer was different. So I'll just go through a few of them, but I've put this into 2 slides because I just couldn't pick from them. I just wanted to share. So not cheating or plagiarizing documents, helps you to write formal assignments that will help you when you're at your own out on workplace. What lecturers expect, teachers, students, and staff members and community are all equal, give respect to them, and they play an important role to make community better. give respect to lecturers and classmates, get respect from lecturers and classmates, being capable to meet deadlines, doing work without chatting and standing behind your own work, no matter how good or bad. I think that might be cheating. I'll double check that, but I think that could be what that means. I think it means that you must always complete your own work to your own best standard, no copying or pasting others' works and referencing all work completed. And then a lot of them said, I don't know, in one way or another, and that's fair enough. It was the answers, but I just put in I don't know because that kind of covered what they were trying to say. So this is the second page then, so I'll just go through these as well. So not copying or plagiarizing work from sources that you have referenced in your assignments, the ability to learn, retain information and pass on in future for tasks in workplace scenarios, how strongly you are academically. Academic integrity, I would think, would involve the ethics involved in the way each student approaches their course, working with your own resources, learning from your own work and not passing off others' works as your own. I think academic integrity means trying to complete assessments using the knowledge I've gained to the best of my ability, refers to a fair education for all, and means you must act with honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility, and that the work you produce must uphold these values. So as you can see from these examples, there's, I suppose, so many different understandings of academic integrity. I'm not saying that any of these are necessarily wrong, but it's just everyone has such a different understanding of it. So I suppose it's trying to maybe develop a way of communicating the one understanding of it, but I suppose that's the bigger issue. So then we asked, just to kind of get a bit of insight, are you familiar with any resources within ATU that provide information regarding academic integrity? And 22 said yes, and 43 for no. So just ask then maybe to just, share what resources they are familiar with. So the ones that came through, and it was the same ones throughout. It was the Academic Writing Support Centre, the Academic Learning Badge, the libraries. Each of the libraries on each of the sites were mentioned. Erkind and Turnitin were mentioned as well. The Student Union and the Academic Integrity Badge. I think that was on Moodle as well. And I suppose looking at this, there are loads of resources available, but it's just how do we communicate this with students and make it clear for them to know where to find them, I suppose. So then we asked how could we improve student understanding of academic integrity. So the suggestions that came through were explaining it into lectures, run in-person sessions on it, provide refresher information sessions on it yearly, and put up information posters, discuss it in class more often. And I think I don't actually have a slide on the focus groups, but I think what came through in one of the focus groups as well was that short informational videos are a great way to just share this kind of information. So it was a suggestion on that was to develop a suite of short informational videos, 2 to 3 minutes, on academic integrity that they could just watch through, and the information's there. So I thought that was a great point that came through from a focus group. Then I move on to the academic staff questionnaire. So I'm just going to go straight into this just with a matter of time. So we asked similar question. Do you use a variety of assessments on your program? Everybody answered yes. So we asked then, could you please list the variety or the different assessment types you use? So these are just pulled from a bank of so many assessment types, it was fantastic to see, but I just took this amount for the time being, and I'll go through the rest of them again, but there really is a good variety being used across all 3 programs, which is great. And even looking at the authentic assessments coming back from the students, what they believe, you can see them here that, they're what am I trying to say? They're appreciating the variety, so it's great to see that. And then this is the satisfaction with assessment types. So they were asked a similar question: how satisfied are you that different types of assessments assess students' knowledge of a subject or module? So what I've just done here is I put a side-by-side comparison of the academic staff and student. And I think with some of the other questions, it'd be great to be able to do this as well. So I suppose just looking at the information itself, I'll kind of go more towards the positive. So I look at the very bottom, the research project there. So that's, look, on the academic staff side, it's looking very satisfied that this assesses students' understanding. Where if you look at the student side, it's kind of skewing more towards the neutral or somewhat dissatisfied. There is some that are somewhat satisfied, but it's great to be able to draw these comparisons and look at them side by side. So when the further analysis of the data is done, it'd be really great to look at this in further detail. Then we went on to the topic of feedback. So we asked what different types of feedbacks you use. So again, the same kind of question banks were used and just modified for both the students and staff. So as you can see here, there's a good variety of the different feedback methods used. And we asked then about the timing of feedback. And as you can see here as well, it is correlating to what even the students are saying, between the 2 to 3 week mark. It's kind of where the bulk of it is. And then we asked, what are the benefits of giving feedback on assessments? So I just pulled from a few and tried to kind of put them into themes on what was coming through. So it's an essential part of the learning process. It gives an insight into, or it gives an insight to the students on areas they can improve. It helps the student to learn and judge their own progress, and it's invaluable. An opportunity for students to fill in the gaps in their learning, an opportunity for the lecturer to identify why certain areas cause difficulties for students, and then ensure that students are on the right path regarding their learning and understanding, and gives direction for future learning assignments and coursework. Then the next section looked at, what are there challenges, or do you find it challenging to give feedback? So going through this is giving it in a timely fashion, lack of student engagement with the feedback itself, busy workload, large class groups, group assessments can be difficult for giving feedback. And that was coming through kind of in the term that, you know, if there may be one that isn't kind of pulling their weight, and how do you decipher, and how do you give the group feedback? Do you do it individually? Do you do it as a group? So that was something that was coming through quite a bit. And then time was the big one. And I suppose if you all know yourself, it's very hard to find the time. So that came through quite a bit now with the challenges. We then looked at academic integrity, and do you feel that students have a clear understanding of what is expected from them in terms of academic integrity? So there was 13 for yes and 8 for no. And I've just broken it down into kind of the reasons for yes and the reasons for no. So for yes, it's students receive several reminders about plagiarism, including the student charter procedure, which is shared with them on induction, in class, and during the academic year. I believe that there is an awareness, however, it may not be a priority when completing assignments. Plagiarism is explained to students by ways of example, and as part of the modules they complete, they are made aware of the need for referencing sources of information and the best practices in research. The reasons given for the no were, it's a big phrase for students. I just taken direct quotes from this now because I just thought I couldn't say it better myself. I think it needs to be broken down in year one, but then it needs to be an underpinning concept across the program that binds students and their behaviour. Continuous plagiarism issues. Students have difficulty grasping the concept of plagiarism, and at times students do not reference other people's work and their level of copying. So that's the reasons for the no there. So I know that the next question asked were, what challenges do you face when managing academic integrity on your assessments? So some of the different challenges coming through from this were chatbots, enforcing academic integrity was another one. Deciphering, I suppose, is it all their own work? Did they cut and paste? Do they understand fully what they are submitting? Another challenge, setting original assessments that cannot be completed by AI or other methods. Can be time consuming, checking Turnitin, Erkin reports for large group numbers, and trying to stop students from copying from each other. But then that's really just the overview of what has come through in the questionnaires. Now there is more data there. It's just, I suppose, I could be here all day going through it if we went through everything, but it just kind of gives you an overview of what has come through. And then I'll just talk a small bit about what we've kind of done this year as well. So we met up as a team, the academic leads, myself and the project leads, for showcasing events. So we did these last year and they were very successful. They were a great way to kind of network. So we had one in Sligo and one in Donegal. And I think they were great. I thought they were just a great way of sharing. Everybody was so good in sharing their assessment practices and giving feedback to each other and having a discussion on it. I found them very informative, and it was a great way to, I suppose, bond as a team as well. So they were lovely events. And then also at the last one we just had, Dr. Sean Daffy, who was presenting there earlier on. He gave a wonderful presentation on the use of e-portfolios in assessment. Then we continued the assessment masterclass series. If any of you were here last year, we ran this last year as well, and I just put a QR code there because there's some fantastic masterclass sessions, and they're all available on Digital Ed. So the videos, the recordings, and the slides, and even some supporting documents. So they're really fantastic to look at. So this year we had, the most recent one was raising awareness of current issues and improving inclusion in academic integrity with Dr. Mary Davis. And then earlier in the year, I believe it was October time, we had a masterclass in academic integrity with Rebecca Audrey. And then kind of before Christmas, I think it was, we had a masterclass in exploring education for sustainability assessment opportunities with Dr. Dermot O'Donovan, Dr. John Scahill, and Dr. Mark Kelly. So just upcoming events, on behalf, I suppose, of the Reimagining Assessment team, I'll be attending Eden Conference and the AHE Conference both next week. So the Eden Conference, they're both poster presentations, and with Eden, the title of it is Reimagining Assessment and Feedback for Student Success, Students as Partners in Inspiring Assessment, Transformation and Feedback. So that poster kind of focuses on the raw data. So some of the information you would have seen here today is put onto a poster and just broken down into assessment, feedback, and academic integrity, and just looking at the core information. And then the next one, and I just want to say a massive thank you to Dr. Tricia O'Connell from the Quality for Industry, Dr. Debbie Corcoran from Medical Science, Dr. Susan McDonald from Sociology and Politics, Fláthán McGrath and Mary Hannon from the Occupational Safety and Health, Eleanor Diver and Emma Coyle from the Construction Contracts Management. Each of these have given an exemplar of authentic assessment to be featured in this poster, and I'll share it again, but it is fantastic, and it's great just to compile these different examples within one. And I suppose while I'm saying thank you, I'll say thank you to all the project leads and the academic staff on each of the programs for being so forthcoming with information. It's really, I suppose, without you, the project wouldn't have even been able to go ahead. So a big thank you, and these will be going ahead next week. So after the conference, I'll share the presentation or the posters as well. It'd be great to have. And then just the last point that I'll talk about is the upcoming events. So I don't know if you know or not, but the assessment hackathon will be hosted on Wednesday, 6th of September. So the places are limited, 50 per site. So there'll be one in Donegal, one in Sligo, and one in Galway Mayo. So it's a full day event, and the big idea is kind of the challenge statement. So how can we design academically integral, authentic and sustainable assessment for all in the age of artificial intelligence? So that's the big idea. And it will be working in groups of approximately 6 and coming together and putting together an assessment plan for this big idea. So it'll be a great day, and we have some facilitators on each site. So there'll be Professor Gilly Salmon, she'll be based in Sligo. Sheila McNeil, she'll be in Donegal, and Sue Beckingham will be in Galway. And then on site, there'll be learning technologists and teaching and learning supports to go around to each table and give advice and support the process. So that is also in collaboration with the End Tutor project. And I just want to bring your attention as well to the picture off at the bottom here. That is Noreen Henry, who's working on the End Tutor project as well. She gave this photo for the promotion, but it's actually AI generated as well. So it's just nice to see it coming through. And if you would like to attend, it is filling up pretty fast. So this QR code is there, and it's also available on Eventbrite. So you would have got an email about it. And look, if it goes really well, we'll probably run another session. But it really will be great. And it's not mentioned on the slides here, but there'll be the Lego Serious Play that will be featured in it as well. So that'll be really great to see. And I think that is the end of my presentation. So thank you. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I might have to get you a mic.
Yeah, Emma Cord, ATU Donegal, part of the kind of team on this project, but just any anecdotal or other outcomes that you took the dialogue with students, put into any detail on the slides on that, but how did that go? And
yeah, it was great. So I had the 3 focus groups, and I suppose I haven't gone through the data. I've only transcribed the data on the focus groups. That's the plan for the summer now. But it is really reflecting what was coming through in the questionnaires. There wasn't much outside of what was coming through there. It was more just confirming what had been answered within the questionnaires. Yeah. And then a few, like I was mentioning, the suggestion for the videos, there was a few suggestions that kind of came through that were different in comparison to the questionnaires, but yeah, it did kind of just mirror what had come through. Yeah.
I know there's one question online which I'll relay here.
Oh yeah.
So just someone was interested to know if there were specific years, as in the students, were they in specific years that responded to the survey and participated?
Yes, that's one of the questions that I don't actually have in it, but it is there. So I suppose with the different programs, it's a different setup. So the construction contracts management, that's a 1-year add-on. And then the quality for industry, I suppose that's a different structure as well. It's part-time evening. And then the occupational safety and health, then that was year 1 to 4. So there was a good, I'm trying to think back to it now, but there was a good disparity of the year groups within it as well.
I'd say, Emma, one is you were really sort of did bond us all together, so well done. And also, I think, did you find the students appreciated being asked their opinion? Because I found that when I was asking them to complete the questionnaires, and I was really trying to push on to them that we really wanted feedback. So did you get that vibe from them in the focus groups?
I did, yeah. I found, I suppose the focus groups were online, which I suppose you do have the limitations of people might want to put on their camera, different bits like that. But I use Padlet as well. But I did find people were forthcoming and they were thankful at the end of it. So that was great to see. But I suppose it is their education, and it's great to hear their experience, and it's only going to help improve systems for future students. So yeah, I did really get that impression from them.
By doing projects like this that make you do it, and then you say to the students, I'm learning too, can we do this together? It really does help, but it almost needs that project externally to make you do that dialogue. Thanks very much.
I think as well, so the phase 1 of the project, we looked at just the student experience, but the thing about this phase now, and it will continue, is getting the staff experience, because that's just as important. So it was very heavily focused on student experience, but now it's bringing in the staff experience and trying to find some middle ground. But I suppose that's way easier said than done, but it's great to be able to draw comparisons off the two as well.
Any more questions?
Yep, perfect. So I'll actually stay here because I'm introducing the next group as well. So next up then we have Blahan McGrath and Mary Hannon, and they are both academic leads on the Reimagining Assessment Project, and they are lecturers in the Department of Occupational Safety and Health in Sligo. So their presentation itself is titled Reimagining Inquiry-Based Learning Assessment with the Blinkers Off. Here, I'll just get up your slides.
So good morning, everybody, and thanks very much for listening to us today. So this is Mary and Blahan here, and we are going to be chatting to you about, as Emma said there, reimagining inquiry-based learning with the blinkers off. So you might be wondering why we have a picture of a horse with blinkers on while talking about assessment. And I think one of the reasons that it's actually Blahan came up with this idea is that we have been doing inquiry-based learning as a teaching methodology for a good few years at this point. And I think over those number of years, certain changes had occurred, which we'll come back to in our presentation. Because of all these changes, we became blinkered in what our actual aims and objectives were to some degree. We stayed true to our fundamental principles, definitely, but we had kind of shifted the focus. And I suppose what we wanted to do and what reimagining assessment allowed us to do was to kind of loosen the blinkers a little bit, you know, have more of a look at the journey, have a look at the different stakeholders as being equal participants. And again, we'll come back to more on this, because some of the learnings that we discovered were quite interesting and will lead to really fundamental changes in the way that we conduct our inquiry-based learning. I feel that the student experience is so important, and it's important also to acknowledge that we are all actually going in the same direction. That assessment, we're not assessing at the students, we're not assessing to the students, but that we are all going in the one direction, and a lot of the time with the same objectives. So by including students, by including, I suppose, their perspective, their experiences, we're actually increasing, I suppose, the resources that we as teachers can also utilize. So before any of that, I want to pass you over to Blahan, who will take you through a little bit about what inquiry-based learning is.
Thanks very much, Mary. So I suppose back in 2007, we knew that we wanted one of the major learning outcomes that we want from our programme in occupational safety and health, as health and safety professionals leaving ATU Sligo. We wanted them to be able to work in groups and in teams, because that's something they're going to have to do. They're going to have to lead teams and work within teams as health and safety professionals and drive change. And we also wanted them to recognise the continuous professional development that they're going to need. It's a journey, it's a process. We will never know all there is to know about health and safety, and it's constantly evolving and changing. So we married the two, and we said, okay, we're going to have group work through a mode of teaching called inquiry-based learning. And I suppose just to bring you quickly through what our concept of inquiry-based learning, and not our current modeled it on other concepts, but what we think inquiry-based learning is all about and how we teach through it, is that the student-centered approach to learning, and the student drives the inquiry, they own it. They do it in groups and in teams. There's only one module in which they do it as individuals. But the lecturers, and there's 17 of us across the 8 modules, we've been turned on our head, and we act as facilitators rather than the didactic approach at the top of the class. We act as facilitators to their learning. And the students, what we try to achieve with the students is that they consider the theory that they're learning in their modules, and they apply in a multidisciplinary way, rather than just thinking about an individual learning that they're getting in a module, that they integrate into multidisciplinary problems and scenarios that we the lecturers, pose for them. And they apply this knowledge that they have, and they identify their learning gaps really. And then from that, they investigate and they research to fill those gaps in their learning. And we facilitate them along that process. But ultimately, at the end of it all, they come up with solutions, they come up with ideas and suggestions, and they present their findings to us. Now, within that, we have found, and that's what we really wanted, I suppose, is for the students to take responsibility for their own learning, to recognise and invest themselves in their learning, and to also, I suppose, be able to, we know that they remember more when they do it themselves. So that was something that was very important to us. How do we assess inquiry-based learning? Well, it's a very, very structured approach. There are 8 modules in our programme of inquiry-based learning, and they're all 100% continuously assessed. So you can imagine there's a lot of assessment and all of that among the facilitators. Compulsory attendance is required because we feel that they can't effectively work in groups unless they're there and attending. And there is group and individual elements of assessment. Now, assessment can become very pixelated, and when we started off first, everybody had to change, the facilitators had to change from, you know, being very sure of assessment. They were turned on their head and they could be challenged at any time. And you know, what we probably did in the early stages was we pixelated, and then we said, oh, hold on a second here, we've done too much, that's our learning outcomes, go back to that. But what we did decide is that years 1, 2, 3, and 4 all had a process was assessed and product was assessed. Process has an individual contribution as well as a group contribution, and product is very much group based. Okay, so you can see in years 1 and 2, we very much focused on the process being the most important assessment weighting, with 60% being given to that. But the product, that shifts a little bit in year 3, and 60% on the product, only 40% on process, because we expect them to be getting the process of group work and individual effort and evidence of learning at that stage. And then in year 4, we really put it to the 70% is product and 30% is process. Now, what do I mean by assessing process? I suppose I'd be here all day if I started to tell you all that we actually do in it, but what we would try, put some of the things here, myself and Mary, on these slides to try and say to you that in year 1, we really want them to come together and work together as a group, to learn communication skills, to learn group work, to learn how to effectively function within a group. So group work skills are very much assessed in the process. The adoption of roles, chair, you know, taking minutes, even timekeeping, all of those roles are taken by different people. And remember, they're challenged because they're working in different groups at different times over the semester and certainly over the year. So they have to evolve and start to learn to work with other people and different types of personalities. We do a lot of brainstorming. The facilitator marks them on the process that they're going through. How well are they doing? You know, and they give them feedback on that. Then in year 2 becomes a little bit more, I suppose we're dealing then with more problems. Initially it's investigations, and then it gets into a bit more problems. And they do a lot of concept mapping to try and be clearer on their solution storming. We also introduce peer assessment, again with the facilitator marks, and now we want them to be kind of chairing group sessions. Then we go to year 3. Now we really want the professional skills coming into it. We want them to start to chair effective meetings, to hold effective meetings, and to identify their real actions, as if they were almost like they were working together in a workplace. It's complex workplace scenarios. We want them to really be more effective in their ability to carry out various group roles. And at this point, we do look for evidence of deeper learning, because sometimes group work can actually have a lot of surface learning. So we want to go down into the deeper learning. So they're marked on that in the process. And then in year 4 is a big learning. The 30% is only in process, but we're very much on project management at this point in time. There are obviously peer and self-assessment as well. And year 4 is where they actually start to really defend their findings. And in the final semester, which I just talked to you here a little bit about the product moving on. I'll explain year 4 in a moment, but year 1, they're really only getting used to standing up doing presentations, doing role plays, writing, you know, basic reports. In year 2, we asked them to continue on with their presentations. It's a scaffolded learning approach, so continue on, but your presentations are getting better quality. We're looking for different learning outcomes. Same thing with the reports. But they also add in videos, interviews, where they're getting ready for their work placement interviews that's going to happen in 3rd year. And they actually run our open day really, really well. And then in year 3, now they're getting into very much defense of their findings in presentations, technical reports, again, training videos, and they also do an individual project called a safety statement, which is very much an aspect of in occupational safety and health, and they work with an industry partner there. In year 4, then, you really have defended presentations, Q&A sessions, discussions, and then we have in our final semester a massive project, which is called the EHS management system. And what they do there is we engage an external workplace, a client, who the students all work together, not just as an individual group, but now as a big class group. They elect their own leaders, and we facilitate the process. They're basically bringing at the client, they're dealing with the stakeholders like the employees, the management, etc., and they're putting together a bespoke EHS management systems that stands up to certification, okay, or ISO standards. And they deliver that to the management, and they deliver training to the employees as well on all of that. So it's a real, I suppose it's really acting as consultants almost within that workplace. So it's a big project, and they'd never be able to do that if we didn't bring them through the stages. So now, Mary, back over to you.
So now that you've had an introduction to inquiry-based learning, we will have a look at what was our rationale. Over the years, we have grown from a core teaching group of 5 up to 11 and 17 lecturers involved in the facilitation. So with that brings new perspectives, new views, new experiences, all of these different things. And we felt that we needed a place for people to feel that they could bring in all of that as well. We've had different changes in staff delivering modules, which can have an interesting dynamic as well, but this was really looking at opportunity for people to really get involved. Safety by its nature is constantly evolving, and we really did want to look at feedback from staff and students because we've been at this a while, and it was time to have a look and not just think, okay, it's working, let's keep going. So that was our rationale. So what did we do? And this was, I suppose, in a way, you know, we had the blinkers on, but we're now loosening the buckles, you know, and there's a certain trepidation with that. But we recognise the role of facilitators in assessment, and we wanted to get their perspective a little more. So we surveyed facilitators and we asked them to be bluntly honest about their experience. And we took that on board, and we were really happy to see that the facilitators were really, really happy with their engagement, and they understood the benefits for staff and for students in doing inquiry-based learning. But we did get some good feedback in relation to maybe training or different perspectives, or how do you write these inquiries? And this was interesting for us because we've been doing it a long time, and it was a good, you know, perspective. We engaged students, and as Emma mentioned earlier on, they were really good, open, and we appreciated it because we encouraged them to do that. We're not afraid to have a look at what needs to change. And one of the big findings is that students and staff are equal shareholders or stakeholders, whatever you want to call it. And we really wanted to have a look at that and explore that, you know, and let them get involved. Maybe it could increase motivation, you know, engagement, etc. So Sean Daffy came to ATU Sligo and facilitated a bespoke ABC. We called it our staff collaboration day, and it was great crack. It was really, really good, and I'll come back to some of the learnings out of that. They were broad and they were really, really good. And so we made decisions to go for it. And the one thing I have to say at this point is the programme team have been fantastic in terms of engagement, in terms of giving honest opinions and being open. And if it's one thing that I think we're taking forward is be open, you know, never mind the blinkers, start loosening up the bridle, throw off the saddle, keep going, you know, just if you meet a hurdle, you know, face it. But if at the end of the day, if you're going in the same direction together, it helps an awful lot, you know, and when the blinkers, you know, are removed, you see a lot more, and be open to that. And that's really what we got from the master classes. There were some very practical things like the e-portfolios, which we're going to introduce in September. But there was also other things like ideas and support, and to realise that within ATU Sligo, we're one programme. But we're one part of a much bigger technological university. So hearing from our colleague has been a really, really good perspective for us. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, you might be hearing more from us going along the way, as in our co-collaborators, because we'd like to keep learning and keep introducing. Listening to students, you can see up on screen there are some, I suppose, of the student perspectives, and I really appreciated their bluntness and their honesty, because we go nowhere unless we're open. And some of the things that we took on board was, as facilitators, when they're working in their groups, we work as pairs, okay, maybe sometimes 3. And what they were finding is maybe I might come down and speak to them about something, spend a while, and I'd go away. Láithín might then come down and might contradict what I've said, or where's the time that they're given to explore their inquiry? So we're spending so much time talking to them that we're not giving them the time to just sit. And earlier on, Jan, you had, you know, the screen that was just blank with space, and that identified what our students also need: space, time to think, to inquire, to explore. To one student said, to get the weird, the wild, and the wonderful, and then decide what's weird, wild, and wonderful. And I loved that particular quote. So our staff collaboration day, you'll always see us smiling with this, because as I mentioned earlier, our program has grown significantly. And with COVID and various other things, I'm not sure we had an opportunity to get all of us into the one room to really just collaborate with each other. And it was really fun. But when you do your ABC, you identify your assessments with different stars. And I think in certain cases, we created entirely new constellations, because we are over-assessing our students, and we're comfortable in stating that, no problem. We are over-assessing within our scenarios, we are over-assessing within our semesters, and ergo we're over-assessing the students. In saying that facilitators are not communicating with each other enough, I don't want that to be misconstrued as being a negative thing. We do communicate with each other, but what we were lacking is the space to communicate effectively and the structured approach. And I don't want that word structure to infer that it has to be, I will sit with you at 11:30 every Tuesday. But we are working with students, and I might be working with Láithín on a scenario, but I might be passing, you know, the students to another pair of lecturers in 3 or 4 weeks' time. And we weren't chatting to each other as much as we could, because the blinkers were on, focus on assessment, assessment, assessment all the time, and quantity of assessment, as opposed to the journey to that assessment. In terms of scaffolding, I think you'll be coming back to that a little bit later on. And I've said that we've diluted the fun aspects of group learning. And I'll just give a really quick example. With our first years, we used to bring them on a site visit to the Irrigna mining experience. Brilliant, fantastic in terms of context around safety, but we assessed them on it. So we gave them a scenario, and then we told them, you're going to be tested on this when you come back. So we wanted them to go out there and enjoy a site visit, but they spent the whole time worried about the assessment. So that's a big change for us. Off went the bridle, off we're going in September. They are just going to experience it and to recognize the value of experience. And EBL student-centered learning, but what about actually making them a little bit more active and engaged? Instead of putting them at the center and looking at them, let's let them be involved. And we've got a lot of product variety, which they like, but we've got really high stakes. And I link this to a little bit like somebody saying to me, you know, I want you next week to go out and learn to drive a truck. And I'm going to test you on that next week. I mean, I wouldn't do that for the safety of for the safety of everyone else. I want lessons, I want opportunities to practice, I want somebody to stand beside me to show me where I'm going, but I want that to have low stakes. So we're going to change that. Peer feedback is a valuable life skill. We're going to engage with people, work, life, everywhere. So by bringing that in, we hope that that will instill in the students the benefits of being honest and open with each other, both about their performance and about the courses that they're on. And of course, practical fieldwork is very important, but let's make it fun. So some of the benefits then from staff collaboration there, the freedom to change assessment, and this was wonderful. We surveyed the staff on many occasions, and we're thankful to them for coming back to us. And one thing that came back is they now feel freer, okay? And they're going to give it a go. And I think if that's something that we really want to foster is, you know, try something new. What's the worst that'll happen? You know, once you come back to your fundamental principles, give it a go. We're looking at, we've had renewed enthusiasm for new technology and things like 360-degree cameras, integrating that into capturing work placement experiences so that the experience of a fourth year can be shared with a first year, and letting them get involved in that and just being involved and immerse them in that activity. More focused on student experience, and staff came back to us and said they feel that after the staff collaboration day that they'll enjoy EBL more. And I mean, we kind of said for ourselves, if reimagining assessment gave us something, it was the space that we feel we need and we deserve as teachers to have the space to consider our practice and to consider ourselves, you know, in how we teach. Everybody enjoyed the staff collaboration day, and we're looking at now including students in assessment. And this would be maybe a third year student could, or a group of students could design an inquiry for a first year. Maybe at the end of a lesson, they could create some MCQs themselves, where you use them as up to yourself, but giving them that opportunity to showcase again their learning, what they get from it. And again, giving them that input. You still have the control to decide where you use it, but just letting students be involved. And again, from our point of view, and it came up earlier on about student experience, they've brilliant experience. They have lots to say. And personally, and I don't represent all of the OSH lectures in this, I need to listen to my students more, you know, and just see what they have to say. I still retain the right to use or not use, but I'm going to try and listen. So you might remember our friend earlier on who had the blinkers on. Bláithín is going to take you through now how that how the blinkers are now removed and where we're going.
So I suppose this is how I now feel, and I think a lot of when we left that collaboration day, we all went down and had a cup of coffee and a good chat in the canteen, and we have probably had those kind of moments over the last number of weeks now where we've actually got together and collaborated a lot more, had a chat a lot more, talk about things. So our EBL with the blinkers off has given us freedom. And what kind of changes? Okay, so just to kind of maybe give you some example of the changes, and as I say here, this is the big eureka moment for us going around that room on the collaboration day was assess less and learn more. Okay, so what we have done, we revisited all our scenarios on that day, and we were horrified and shocked about the level of assessment. Our students were being so, they were worn out. They were given high stakes with no practice opportunities. In some situations, we'd said, okay, they've been given practice opportunities in first year and second year, but not a practice opportunity with the defensive findings where you're going to rigorously assess them. You know, all of a sudden that was really high stakes. And we decided that that's what we're going to start to do, is to assess less, give them more learning opportunities, more time to learn. And we also said between the third years and the fourth years, we recognized ourselves by putting it down. There was a huge jump in what we expect them to achieve between third year and fourth year. And fourth year was 70% assessment of this group product, but they never had as individuals been given the time to really gain that skill level before it became really high stakes. So our industry partners are going to use more in third year to get the students ready for the fourth year project. Now, we also then looked at it from a student perspective, and Mary has already said it, include the students in the assessment creation. They've been out on work placement in fourth year. Let them use opportunities that they found challenging in their placement, and bring that back to the students in the third year before they go out. You know, give them opportunities maybe to create assessments through scenarios or investigations, and you know, just create the opportunity. Forget about the assessment element of it. What about the bonding day opportunities? You know, Mary mentioned about a site visit that became an assessment visit. You know, there are so many site visits that we can do, but there's also some days that we can just have as bonding days for the actual first years to hear what's happening with fourth year or with the third year or whatever. So we're going to bring in more of those. E-portfolios, we have decided that students need to determine and have their stakeholders in this. They need to be able to say to us, I want you to look at this as a showcase So we're going to introduce E4 portfolios for the program from first year right through to fourth year, where we'll actually ask them, put up something that you're proud of, put up your presentation that you're proud of. Now reflect and tell us, not big reflection, why are you proud of that? Okay, and that's what we're going to have. So at the end of the day, they should have a portfolio that they're proud of, and that was really taken from our colleagues and it's Sean that came in and spoke to us about that in our collaboration day. The other thing that we want is, I suppose, from the staff perspective, the inclusion of new staff in EPL and giving them the freedom to put their content and their theoretical information into scenarios so that we can create new knowledge, new scenarios. Give our structured communication between the facilitators, as Mary said, at the beginning of the semester now, we've carved out time. We're going to talk about what we're going to do for the semester. And we also are going to have handovers. The other thing that we decided, we looked at it and we said, one person has to almost anchor the EPL across the semester so we can give good handovers and that, you know, there's some consistency in the approach going forward. The real thing I think that was absolutely brilliant from the ABC was that all the staff now, you know, they all spoke about in their surveys how they intend to apply the ABC approach now to their other modules. So we have all learned, we've been given an opportunity to learn. Look, I'm just going to go briefly through how we did this in third year scenario. It's myself and one of my colleagues, Ushin Geraghty. We have a scenario in third year which is quite complex, interdisciplinary, looking at occupational health and occupational hygiene and legislation. So the students were given with the blinkers on. We looked at it in the collaboration day and we were running 2 scenarios consecutively. We had 6 weeks. We were in one in 3 weeks and another in the other 3 weeks. Very similar scenarios. One was dealing with maybe dust exposure, one was dealing with chemical exposure. So that there was differences within it. But they had 4 products in the 6 weeks. They had to do a presentation and report on one of the scenarios and then very little time for feedback before they do another project, another consultant report and significant presentation in the second. We gave them no practice opportunities. All high stakes, The product, the 2 products for each of the scenarios were, you know, significant marks. And then we realized, well, we always knew it, but we realized how unfair we were because some of the theory we were covering as they were actually expected to have an understanding. So the inquiry that they were being put on was too great a jump. So we sat down, there's 4 of us involved in that semester 1, and we spoke to our colleagues who were running the other 6 weeks, and we said, listen, shift it around. Can we do it later and you do your one earlier? Because they need to know our information in theoretical lectures beforehand. So we delayed the scenarios until the last week of the semester. The students have information that they can then move forward with. We decided to run the scenarios concurrently because the students need to learn from each other. So let one half of the class take one scenario, work on their little groups on it. The other half of the class take another scenario. So you could have an A and a B. They all have to work in small groups of 4 or 5. Only do 2 products. They have to do, within that 6 weeks, 1 presentation and 1 report. But now we give them time to engage with the other students. So the students now become the teachers. So they will learn, they will say group A is given the wood exposure and group B are given the chemicals. Group A have to explain to group B and do the practice presentation on them. And they also have to assess each other's occupational hygiene report. So that's really what they're going to learn. And then the students can actually help in that learning by actually creating MCQs for the other group to say, okay, yeah, I understand this is, I've got some deep learning from this as well. They're going to have that as a practice opportunity. They get their peer feedback. They get, and they're allowed to stagger the assessment. The report is the first 6 weeks, the presentation is the last. So we've taken the pressure off ourselves. We'll be able to give them good feedback. They'll get good feedback from their peers and they'll all have learning. So that's one of the ways in which we've revised just 1 scenario, I suppose, 2 scenarios. So now, that's you, Mary.
To summarise, We're happy with inquiry-based learning and we feel that the students like it, the staff like it, and we want to keep going with it. Assess less and learn more is going to be our motivation or our motto. Student experience is now key and assessment should align back to learning outcomes. In some cases, I think every scenario was trying to address every learning outcome all the time, which we just need to go back to our fundamental principles and look at the students and, you know, what will they have at the end of the semester. Facilitators will take the space and time to reflect and enjoy each other's company, enjoy each other's experiences, integrate the knowledge that we can get from each other, and have more fun and freedom to explore through learning. Because when the students leave us, we hope that they bring with them that, you know, that desire to learn more, that want to continue their learning, you know, and maybe even share that learning with others. So I just want to say thank you very much for your time and attention listening to us today. Just up on the screen there's a couple of pictures from the Staff Collaboration Day and some of our students on their various different endeavours. And I just want to thank everybody involved in reimagining assessment, our colleagues and students on the OSH programme, everybody today for listening to us, and a special word for Emma for keeping us very much on track along the way. And we've gained an awful lot from it, but we don't see this as a finish line. And if you remember our friend the horse, this now is a case of just keep going. You know, there is no finish line. This is going to be something that should now be seen as almost cyclical, and that we keep doing this, you know, going forward, not necessarily with a framework, but just because we want to. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, if there is any questions. So,
Just wait for the speaker. Yeah.
So last year we got an artist in residence to work with students on our programme in the Early Childhood Education Care BA. And so she did a lot of work with communities and with our students. But we brought the students out into the communities and she did lots of different performances with the children in libraries and all of that. But the students were saying, so is this, what class is this now? What are we doing? Are we being assessed on this? They couldn't, like what we would have seen was the holistic learning of that experience with the artist and how they could reflect on how they could interpret that in their practice with young children. But their mindset was such that we come here to learn, what's the learning from this and how are we going to be assessed on it, rather than seeing the value of that experience. So no more than going to the Arena Mines and enjoying that and nothing without joy or fun. There's a piece there that students are so constricted by the educational system to date that they can't see the value of these wonderful experiences.
And I
Thank
think
you for that.
thank you. And I think we'll say one of the key things with the inquiry-based learning is we take 7 weeks at the very start of first year, and it's all about context and it's all about inquiry-based learning and it's all about, you know, why are you doing this? And that's where I think we're going to make some really fundamental changes with that, just the experience and the bonding days and going out and the trust. That word came up earlier on today because we're expecting them to work together for 4 years. But they have to learn to trust each other and they have to learn to recognize what they have, but it's just through the experience. So, you know, it is similar for us and we try and address it at the very start. Again, it's a little like building the habits. We try to get them in, do some good habits at the start and then try and replicate those going forward.
Hi, Rachel McCarthy here from ATU Galway. Bláithín and Mary, thanks very much. That was very enjoyable and informative, and I think it's great to be able to see the fact that there's freedom with the blinkers off. It's brilliant. The question I have is it all campus based, or is your program completely campus based, or is any of it online? And if it is totally campus based, do you think it would work online, the inquiry based learning type model? And you probably had experience of that over COVID times anyway. But you know that this type of learning, because I do some of this type of stuff myself with the mature students we have in industry, and they tend to like being together on campus. But just wondering, was it all on campus, and how do you think the online?
Our undergraduate, so I suppose our undergraduate program that we're talking about here is all online, and the 5 hours of EPL every single week with students that's facilitated. But we also have adopted, because we have an online level 6, 7, 8 and masters, and what we have done is we've adopted some of our scenarios to be given online and for students to work on those and work in groups, and to also do the multidisciplinary, bring in the scenarios. So we have adapted to some extent. Have we really got them involved in working in groups to the same extent? No. But I think it is doable, and I think the online learners would actually engage with that quite well, because they're very, very motivated. But again, I do know that, and there are colleagues of ours in the environmental program that are very much working with, students in groups in an inquiry-based learning approach. Yeah, so it is possible. They're mature, usually mature students and working. Yeah, working, and many of them, some of them may not be working in the whole area of health and safety, but others are. So you have a mixed group there, yeah.
One comment on, well, it's kind of a comment and kind of a question. Someone is saying, why not no stakes assessment? Change the linguistic framing to change the performative intent, and don't call the process assessment.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a comment, kind of a question as well.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And I think when we're looking at the whole Arigna thing, we're literally just going to say that this is for experience only, and we're going to take them back, and we are going to talk to them about it, because we do want to find out what they've got, but we're going to get rid of that whole word assessment around and just say, how did you enjoy it? God forbid that there would be some, enjoyment, and say, well, what did you learn anything? But literally it will be in, sitting around the round tables, and then maybe we start the conversation, but then maybe do that and let the first year start, to engage with each other, because they don't know each other. So I agree, we get rid of some of the language that we're using with it, and I think it will help hugely.
And I think what we have done is we've reviewed the scenarios, and we've said that's just formative. Forget about assessment. That we've done that. So there is definitely. We do talk about process though, so there will be things that we will be looking for. Have they got that skill set now, or have they developed it to a certain standard? Are they becoming competent in what we want them to do here? So we will be looking at that, and that's all part of the process, Mark. But there's definitely, we've gotten rid of an awful lot of assessment and an awful lot of practice without assessment opportunities, depending on scenarios. Yeah.
More questions?
That's
Thank
it.
you very much.
Thank you.
Mary and Blanc, that was fantastic, and it's great to hear what you've learned, I suppose, throughout this year and how it's going to be put into action. But it's really been fantastic, and it's been wonderful working with you as well. And a big, I suppose, while I'm doing the introductions here, a big thank you for this part to the students and staff from the Occupational Safety and Health for giving us all this feedback and feeding into the project. So a big thank you to everyone from that programme. So next up we have Eleanor Diver and Emma Coyle, and they are lecturers in the Department of Civil Engineering and Construction, and they're here representing the Construction Contracts Management Programme, and they're also the academic leads for the programme, or for the project. So I'll just get your presentation up for you.
Hello, so I know we got introduced, so I'm Emma from the programme team, and I'm joined by Eleanor here. So I will do a bit of an introduction to the programme initially to bring you up to speed. Some of the other project team are aware of what we've been up to over the last while. So we'll be discussing our 1-year program. So initially I'll give you the program details, what our assessment strategy has been and how that has been amended by what I think most of us have taken part in now on the project, the ABC Learning workshop, which Deirdre facilitated for us. What actions we took and the outcomes of that, and hopefully the same as most people on the project, future plans that we have for future implementation of this program, and things that we're maybe taking into other programs and modules as well. So the program that we are involved in is the BSc Honours in Construction Contracts Management. This is a 1-year add-on that is tailored to maybe students who are in a different discipline and want to move into construction contracts management, or students who maybe have a level 7 and are looking to upskill. So the range of learners that we have are maybe in full-time work. A lot of them are in, engineering roles, in BIM management, in construction management, and they want some specific skills. Some of the students we have are returning to work, and there are students we have as well who are, coming from a trades background and are upskilling in order to progress in their career. So it's a good broad range of very, and I was mentioned before, motivated students. This is delivered through Springboard, and it's a 1-year, 12-month effectively program. It's run over 4 sessions, so it's very much condensed program into 12 months, where basically what would be 2 academic years, and for a daytime program, it's squeezed into 4 sessions of 10 weeks for the evening students. So we have 9 modules altogether, and these modules were previously delivered on campus in parts of other programs like our Level 8 in Construction Management, and we have 7 lectures in the program team.
Right, so I suppose the main one is Emma and I teach between us 4 out of the 9 modules. So I think we were most interested in actually applying to take part in this project to actually get us together as a program team, and also you sort of knew, because we delivered it on campus face to face, it was going to be a bit of a different challenge, converting it to an online environment. And I suppose it's when some of the things we talk about later on is the idea of what the students' expectations with online learning was and what ours were. Okay, so basically just to show you, we do an assessment schedule for the students anyway. We did it as a department, and basically each module tells them in week 1 to 10 what assessments are due when. So I think we wrote down that 3 out of the 9 modules have a final examination. One's an online examination, like a written exam in law, and then 2 we're actually making on campus. So again, I suppose traditionally lectures are all a bit about integrity of assessment, and I think we didn't want to lose completely the idea of an exam, in person, in a room. What do they do in the 2 hours? So again, with lots of preparation, but I think it's a way of, at least when you, in some of the examples in the 10 weeks or the 20 weeks I've had this class, some of them never turned on the camera. So I never actually saw their face. I saw the student ID card on the system, but they didn't turn on the camera, and they wouldn't even put a photograph up on Blackboard. 2 of the ladies refused even at the end. So, so that sort of actually seeing them in person and that communication, it's a whole different sort of hurdle to learn yourself as the sort of teacher or the facilitator. What we then did is obviously a lot of the modules are big. So the construction management 1 and 2 are sort of a 10-inch ECTS. They're all 100% CA. Again, maybe we'll talk about the idea of over-assessment. They're quite quick processing through maybe 5 to 6 assessment points in the 10-week session. And then again, looking at the idea of how did we change things. So for instance, I tried to get rid of some of the more of the written assignments, and we went to more the MCQs and sort of guest lecture reports and summaries even. So instead of saying write 1,000 words on the guest lecturer, it would literally be a table with prompts. So different ways of trying to change some of the written assignments to other sort of assessment methods. Okay, we obviously then hope to do all things like the formative assessment and the quizzes, the wikis, the tasks and draft review. And I suppose the only thing I'd like to say is, as much as we say maybe we do over-assess, sometimes students won't do any learning activity unless it's an assessment. So again, it's that human behaviour. What's it worth? What's it worth to me? So there is a little bit of the carrot answer. Maybe we need the stick. So, and then the next one then, so we started we were already starting the semester or the session 1 before we actually took part in the project. So then we did the ABC learning in November, and you can see we sort of made more changes as we went on. So there's things there, for instance, I would have done lots of guest lecture reports in dispute mitigation and resolution. And so if I had 3 guest lectures, that was 3 written assignments. So in the end, I did a summary table, and then we basically, the big change we did was we made a group discussion where I had a rubric and basically some prompts, and I left it to them to discuss the content of the guest lecturers and get them discussing it, you know, rather than doing a written assignment. And it actually went quite well. They enjoyed it. They thought it was more than doing written assignments. It was, again, we're doing it on an online environment, so it was a little bit stiff. And I had to be sort of quite generous, maybe with the marking. And I think maybe the idea of maybe we did a practice one, the second one would have been better. Again, I had issues that it was recorded as evidence to show the external examiner. So I had to sort of promise that it would get deleted and it wouldn't be there forever. So there's sort of issues of, you know, the records and how people are comfortable. You know, so with the sort of, if you gave them a choice of assessment, if you said, did you want to do a little podcast or do you want to do a verbal presentation? A lot of the students by default would go back to, I'll do a written assignment. You know, so you offered them the choice, the platter, and then they go back to, oh, I'll write a little essay on that, or I'll write the written thing. So just even talking to the students about how we're going to do a group discussion, how are you going to get, you know, the idea of marking, participation, content. So it just, you know, we tried alternatives to a traditional written assignment in a 100% TA. And then, for instance, in work placement, which is Emma's module, she's bringing in some other alternative assessment methods.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us got some good input from Sean at one of our showcases in March. So typically the work placement, one of the assessment products, we'll call it, would be a weekly log of what you got up to that week. And, you know, in this environment, and obviously a lot of these students are older, they may be in work, giving them maybe an extra skill now of developing a portfolio and that wee bit of training on that. So we're switching that to something a bit more up to date and including e-portfolios. The other aspect of this group, which was a wee bit challenging, was that, as I said, many of these are in a relevant workplace at the moment, so they can, you know, we can extract some of the learning from the current workplace, which is excellent, and that will actually, we can use that for next year. But some of the students, you know, with their own circumstances, their own finances, whatever it might be, they're having to remain in their current full-time work in order to pay the bills, let's say. So an alternative to work placement has also been developed. And this is kind of trying to bring in some more of the competencies and obviously meet the learning outcomes. But with these, you know, mature students mostly having some life skills, I'm trying to adapt that to make it more applicable. So that although they'll probably do absolutely fine, that they actually can gain something from this in terms of learning, not just satisfy the module learning outcomes. So
I think even though one of the key ones is the idea of professional development and the idea that, you know, they can see that through education, they're upskilling and it's opening a career. So our guy from the trades background has done a level 7 at Sligo. He's come to do a level 8. He wants to be a construction manager. And obviously, sometimes you're limited by you were the plasterer on this job. So through education, you can see that the opportunities and the view of the world is actually quite, you know, it's broadening for them. So it is a pleasure in that way.
It really is. And actually, where you do get that engagement, particularly, you know, that student, you do see that value of it really is nurturing the mind, which I hadn't thought about, you know, in terms of applying your knowledge. So it's been really good for me, fairly new in the teaching environment as well. Yeah, so some of the, do you want to?
Yeah, so I think this one, we had our aims and we've ticked them all. We've been very positive. So, I mean, one of the reasons I did the digital ed module at GMIT as it was the year before last, and I had done the ABC learning myself just for a module. And I said, I want to do this project to make my, you know, all the people I work with on this program, let's do it. And we didn't get a full day. I think we only got 2 or 3 hours. But I think, again, it's more or less obvious. But if we could do that every year, sit down at the start, carve out that time for us as a team, it'd be great. But I mean, I teach on 5 programs, so I don't think I'm going to get 5 bonding days. Okay. The other one then is sort of again, this idea that UGL, you know, multiple means of action and expression, and it only, well, I have done it where you offer them assessment methods, or just show me, you know, this is the learning outcome. How can you demonstrate it to me? It does motivate, and they hope to take ownership of learning, but it doesn't suit the weak students. You know, the only ones who ever opt for it are the best students anyway, in the sense of you know, they've got all the skills they need. They've got an organised bag. They know where they're meant to be. They manage the time. They're most likely working 20 hours a week as well. So, you know, all those things, I think offering it back to them sometimes makes it look like you as the teacher or the facilitator, you're planning, well, this is what we're going to do. I'm the boss, but we'll get our learning done together. But I know, you know, I'll give you some little choice, but I'm not going to start at the beginning saying, let's design the assessment together. I don't think, and I know me as a student having done courses, I don't want to be asked at the start, you know, let's design our assessment together. We then looked again the idea of our digital technology and assessment activities. So we have done Turnitin, but we use it as a tool. They see the Turnitin results. We don't use it as, you know, catching them out. I don't think, being honest, the whole attitude is not that way. And then obviously we wanted just to see as a program team what if we got anything we think, I love the word, innovative or assessment or feedback, you know, things that really are basically good teaching and learning. But have a buzzword for everything. So I could do UGL and everything else. So
yeah, so kind of reflecting back on the ABC learning workshop, we did manage, I think it was quite 2 hours for the workshop. It was facilitated by Deirdre McClay. And I suppose everyone's kind of give their input or their view on so far and what they took from it. I might talk me personally, kind of coming from industry, civil engineering background, now stepping into teaching research methods and, you know, trying to apply those skills and draw that out of the student. I found this so valuable. And even in, you know, the 10, 11, whatever years since I was in formal education, things have moved a lot, you know, along a lot, and COVID has changed maybe the expectations of our students, and now we're on an online environment and everything, you know, so we need to have these universal ways of assessing and teaching. So we just have on screen a selection of some of the mapping for anyone who hasn't done the ABC learning workshop of the types of products or the way that the students are assessed across some of the modules. So the other thing about this is that although you do kind of work and reflect on your own module, by osmosis, you end up overhearing what other lecturers are doing. You do make the changes where you need to. And I took quite a bit from this into some of my other modules and programs as well. So I think generally this went down very well. And again, that space where you're not talking about other department issues or other programs was very valuable, I think, to everyone on the program team.
I suppose it is challenging the idea. Basically, we're all about product. We're all about what do they produce? Have I got evidence to show my engineer's island or the CIOB? So you're all on evidence. And then really some of these other ones on the right-hand side, you know, the collaboration, discussion, investigation, practice, you know, just even seeing those visually, you could see. But again, sometimes like the law one, which was then assessed with a written assignment, you know, can you know, quote the law correctly, have proper structure, you know, and all this. It was then complemented by some of the more 100% CA ones. So we didn't all have to be a perfect circle, but you could then see across the program that you were trying to do a good range.
Exactly, yeah. Yes, and Emma touched on it previously about how this allowed us then to effectively, although we do our assessment schedule, that assessment schedule for the students doesn't actually talk about the I suppose the category which the assessments fall into. So we were able to we were prompted to do that, which did keep us on board. And again, it was a nice summary. We're all more from a technical background in the department, so this was something everyone could really easily engage with.
And again, you sort of found out most of it was either a written examination or a written assignment. You know, like you say, we do a site visit and we do a site visit report afterwards. So then what we did, obviously getting to at the end of the project, we did a little quick Microsoft Forms. And these are sort of a word cloud of the sort of 3-word answers, short answers we got from the 7 members of our program team. Okay, so you can see just sort of the things that came up. Obviously, the idea that we've even got the terminology as well, but the idea of a different assessment methods. We had collaborated. One lecturer in particular was going on about how she felt it was balanced. You know, the idea of knowing what's going on in other modules. Again, we did have guest lectures that the students really enjoyed, and we think was benefited as well.
And I think kind of touching on that point and what was mentioned earlier is that even in this process, 1 or 2 of the module or the program team had reflected, they have done their assessment and have actually satisfied with this. But it's that considered approach that I am aware now that, you know, I will not. It's not just a matter of course. So some of the phrases then coming back, I will try to increase the variety of assessment methods, breaking the class into groups, improved engagement from students. So I'll look to enhance that. And very much focus on practical and teamwork, and further focus on group sessions. So that's coming up a lot, particularly because it is construction in the construction sector. And determine a key list of recordings, because this is an online program, for struggling attenders to promote submissions. And then there's more detail provided, but that's kind of, I just wanted to kind of give a flavour of what some of the feedback was. So it's basically about that breadth of assessment types and delivery. Yeah, bespoke assessment strategies, and the workshop is very beneficial as a program team. So given we're such a small program team, we had very good engagement in terms of getting feedback from everyone. So that was very beneficial for myself and Eleanor.
And I think the other thing that I just would then like to say is, talking about student expectations, they saw it as a flexible online program. The flexibility was, you know, we were having 2 evening sessions on a Tuesday and a Thursday evening, and they thought it was flexible to attend. So what they would do is they say, oh, I'm traveling that day for work, I will look at the recording. So the idea that we were thinking, oh, we'd have our notes up, we'd do a little bit of a present, or we'd have a recording, and then we'd do some activity in those 2-hour, 3-hour slots. A lot, only I would say only half of the class actually logged in and engaged in that slot. And then the rest would say, oh, I'll look at the recording. So again, trying to gauge them and us was really hard, not turning on the cameras. And for instance, I did like a presentation, which means they had to turn up. And I did it at the end, week 9, 10. And I think if I'd done it earlier, that would have got the sort of the group dynamic going. And I would have put faces to names, and we, you know, they see me as a person and I see them as a person. And I suppose then just finally, it's just what's our future ambitions. So again, I mean, I know there's a big buzzword on the digital transformation. You are using some of the tools, and we really, what I think we put it in our title, it was the engagement that we found hard in the online format. So anything that could increase our engagement, you know, that's what we're looking to do. And, you know, you might use the Padlet and the Mentimeter and the quizzes, but if they're not actually logged in, it's, you know, you could do all that work and you're only still talking to 2 people with no camera on. So it's like a black hole. So we have done the sort of GISC digital survey, and we're going to redo them and see, have we changed, or, you know, how we're getting on. Again, what the project did make us talk with the class and the cohort. You know, we were asking them for their opinion. You know, we weren't just bribing them or anything, but we were, you know, it did make us I think they did appreciate that we wanted to know feedback, and, you know, we were honest saying this is the first time we're running it online. You know, help us improve for next year. Again, I do have a bit about, you know, is an exam an assessment of learning, or is it an assessment for learning? So I think, you know, one of the you're going to assess something at a point, like in a terminal exam. I think it is an assessment of what we think they've learned in the semester. So again, where there's that whole issue of, you know, you can write feedback, you know, 1,000,000 times and they don't actually read it, they'll just look at the mark. And then unless you maybe look them in the eye, or you do a draft submission, maybe that in the draft and redraft, you get that sort of more of the dialogue. Other than that, some of the students maybe are just thinking, what's my mark? Have I passed? Have I got 40? I'll stop actually submitting. And I have had students do that as well, where they've got to 40 on the 100% CA, and then you don't see them at the end. So they are, and then again, we're trying to share things. So rubrics and quizzes, you know, just trying to be a bit more collaborative. Instead of you on your own in a module, you know, thinking, God, I've got to write my MCQ, just trying to share things, which sometimes lecturers don't do. And we, you know, and it is that you on your own in a room. So I think anything that makes, you know, what's the fancy word? It's not a collaboration of learning. There's a word for community of practice. You know, the idea that we're in it together, but you have, maybe we should celebrate things where they go wrong in your teaching rather than the things that go right. Academic integrity, I suppose, is a buzzword, but we're just trying to maybe have that conversation with the student about the idea of, if you're under pressure, you know, please don't go and use something. We'd rather be in your own words and it not be brilliant, but it's your, you know, it's your effort. You know, someone said if learning's hard work, there's time involved. What have you done in the time? It's you. You know, that's what we want. And the final one then is obviously we're going to use this because this course is now running for another 2 years online. We've got the funding from Springboard and the Human Capital Initiative, the HCI. We're trying to sell the master classes. And again, people to just take a bit of time out of your own pressure of teaching, go attend that. It might prompt you to try one new thing, and it only has to be small. And then we're also going to use this. This is an accredited course. So the evidence and the idea we're learning on improving our teaching and learning practice. We're going to store all this and bring it out of the cupboard when the CIOB come. You know, so we really have enjoyed the project, haven't we? Yeah. So I think we're on the last one. We'll let you click on with the thank you and if there's any questions. We can move. We're off the stage. So I think we're okay, Emma. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thanks a million, Eleanor and Emma. And again, I just want to say from the project team, thanks a million to the students and staff of the construction contracts management course as well. So up next then we have our final presentation of the day, and it is reimagining assessment practices on the BCS quality for industry delivered by ATU Galway, and that is Marilla Keating, Isha Kelly and Trish O'Connell, and they are the project leads for the program leads for the project. Good. I'll get this here for you. Here.
Show you.
This is the microphone here, so
Okay.
I can be on this side.
So it's so to be here. Perfect. Hi, everybody. How are you? My name is Isha Kelly, and my colleagues Marilla and Trish are with us as well, and we're going to share the presentation for our presentation on our part of this project. First of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our program team and our students who worked with us this year on this initiative and supported us indeed all the way through. Thank you as well, Emma. This is what we're going to talk to you about today, our journey. We're going to give you an overview of our Bachelor of Science in Quality for Industry programs, level 7 and level 8 at ATU Galway, Mayo. We'll talk about why did we sign up for this, and we talk about capturing the assessment practices throughout the modules, and then we're going to give you 2 practical examples. We felt this was the best way to represent the work and the meaning of this project for us this year, and then what's happening next, what will be our next move. So an overview of our program. What we have is we have an add-on level 7 and level 8 Bachelor of Science in Quality for Industry. These are both 60 credit programs. The program developed and grew organically, if I could say organically, in response to industry and student needs, and is delivered part-time in the evening to a cohort of students who are working mostly in medical devices, pharmaceutical perhaps, but also IT, healthcare, hospitality and financial sectors. The aim of the programme is to provide working adults overall with the skills to obtain key roles in quality management and quality engineering. And indeed, the aim for our students is that they achieve qualifications that enable them to progress in their workplace. And in fact, many of them need these qualifications to progress. So our students would progress from being maybe product builders, process operators, to technicians, to training assistants, to supervisors, to technicians, to engineers, mostly in industry, as I said, but as I said, we also have people from other sectors as well. They're very busy people. They're working, raising families. They are time poor. They're juggling their time to enable them to achieve this progression. So we have, as you can see, we have 17 modules, and on this is actually a lovely screenshot here of some of the students on one of Marilla's classes taken at Christmas time, getting them all on Teams to put on their cameras, which sometimes can be a bit of difficulty because they come in from work and, you know, they might be in their pajamas, and so they won't turn on the camera until after class to talk to you. I don't want to turn on the camera. I don't want people to see me like this because they're just back from work and they're relaxing. But anyway, Marilla got them to do this and it's a great shot. It really represents who we have. And sometimes we get pets and we get all kinds of children maybe as well coming on screen. But we have 17 modules there, and as you can see, the level 7 BSc for Quality for Industry, we have 3 different special purpose awards. So students can come in, sometimes they can take a module, but they may take one of the special purpose awards, which is a certificate at 20 credits. But in fact, what happens a lot of the time is they mix and match these and take the program over 3 years typically. Some have done it in 2 years, and some others take 5 or 6 years. So we get to know our students very well. It's, as I said, it's in the evening, and during COVID, of course, we were presenting online. The level 8 then is a follow-on from this, but also cognate disciplines. People with cognate level 7 may be able to apply for this as well. And in our first year, you can see there we have 5 modules, but also with the addition of the research project from year 2, we have a special purpose award there as well, which has been Springboard funded in the past. And the second year then would, so that would mean your first year, if you do the certificate, is 40 credits, and then the second year is 20 credits. So it means people can go on to achieve their level 8. So anyway, why did we sign up? I've spent a lot of time talking about the program, but what I want you to look at here is the continual improvement piece here on the left-hand side. Quality is all about continuous improvement. And this is the plan, do, check, act cycle, which is probably one of the first things that we ever talk about when we talk about quality, and we continue to do it. And continuous improvement is a never-ending journey towards what you might call perfection, which is what things like Six Sigma represents, really, if you think about it. And sometimes that's where we're going in our program. So it was natural for us to move on from doing, some of us participated in a project last year. Many of our lecturers have taken technology enhanced learning, teaching and learning modules, doing their MSc. We had that progression during COVID, where we had to go online and adopt technologies, and indeed it created changes in our programs as it was. So this was a natural progression for us to embark on this project. So look, there was a lot of other advantages, of course, with being part of this project as well, and some of them were, as we've mentioned here, we could take part in these classes. We got great opportunity to participate with our peers actually, and meet our peers from Donegal and Letterkenny, and also to capture staff and student feedback through that survey that Emma created. And as we'll show you, we molded that in order to capture a little bit more information ourselves in a shared document with our program team. So we had reviewed our delivery in 2022. We were part of the iNote project, and we focused on digital enhancements. And then we had our programmatic review last year, which meant that every lecturer was able to review their module, and particularly in the light of the COVID change in practices, how that had affected their modules. So a lot of people had moved to, a lot of modules had moved to maybe 100% continuous assessment or final assessments rather than examinations, or, you know, there was variety coming in and changes, and we had an opportunity there. However, post-pandemic, the idea of reviewing our current delivery and our current assessment practices, this was a great opportunity for us. So that's why we took part. So pre-pandemic, we were meeting students face-to-face in lecture halls in the evenings, Monday to Thursday evenings. We had our lectures scheduled, always face-to-face. During the pandemic, we were online, on Teams, pre-recorded, using all the technology we could. This year, we are blended. This had been our objective before any pandemic. This had been our objective as a programme. And what blended means for us, and it depends on the module and the requirements of the module and the lecturer, but what it means for us is meeting students face to face perhaps 3 to 4 times in the semester. And our starting point was with an induction, which we held in September and was very successful last year, where we were able to introduce students to the college, the facilities, the lecturers, students' union, all those various things, so that when they were coming in just those few times, it wasn't strange and mysterious for them. So I better move along. So what was our starting point? So here are a few screenshots of the type of assessments that had been carried out. So we do lots of presentations. We have exams, Moodle quizzes, a lot of guest speakers in various subjects, and it's particularly important at level 8. We use quite a lot of guest speakers coming in from industry to talk about their topics, because of course what's happening in industry is the most up-to-date. Is the most up-to-date experience and knowledge that is there. All kinds of, we have workplace-based projects in both degrees, and of course other practical assessments, and using all of those tools that we learned. People mentioned Mentimeter and all those various tools. They're not all coming to my head now, but you know, all those we've used. Amongst all the lectures and the modules, we have used a variety of all of those. So so this is where we were. This was our starting point, what was being practiced, and then with the help of Emma and the survey, we created this shared file with our programme team, and we molded Emma's document beyond just assessment to also capture delivery, because now we were using this blended method. And so our survey, or our Excel sheet, captures not just the assessment but also the delivery. And so doing that was another opportunity for us to self-assess this year. And of course, our next step now will be to review the student experience based on our evaluations for this year. But of course, we also have some lovely, wonderful feedback from Emma's survey as well on assessment practices. But we will also be able to review delivery and assessment practices with our own student our own student evaluations of modules and the programs. So I'm going to move on then, and we're going to have 2 examples, just 2 practical examples of assessment practices and changes and reviews that were made. And Rilla is going to present one, and Trish then is going to, so I'll hand over to them.
So hi everybody, Marilla Keating is my name, and I'm just going to go through a small thing that made a big difference. Okay, so I am one of the people of the 16, 17 modules there. 4 of them I'm driving a final assessment for, and a scenario-based assessment. So an example of that would be each student on download gets a unique scenario. I only have a bank of 4, so but I think there's a huge number there. They all have the same questions requiring to apply the theory to that scenario that they get. So if you remember, they're working adults, you know, so they're dying to know why they do the things they do in industry. So we give them the context around that. So then for the final assessment, I give them a scenario, and then they have to apply the theory that they got in class from me to that situation. It's open book. It's open over 2 days, Friday and a Saturday, just to catch them all. And it must be completed 6 hours from download. So that kind of puts a little bit of pressure on them, trying to make it authentic. So it is, which is unique, but I'm reducing the risk of collusion by giving them a little bit of time pressure there. So so I'm just going to, I've got 3 slides here, or no, actually maybe 4. I'm just going to tell you about a small thing that made a big difference. So last year I just did this deployment of this final assessment through a Moodle quiz. Few little hiccups on that. And so this year I'm now using the group method. So let me just tell you about last year. So I actually did this over 2 years. So it's a Moodle quiz of 1 question. So when the student clicks download, the quiz randomly selects from my bank of 4 there a question. So on the right hand side, I don't know, do I have access to the right hand side is their view. So they get the scenario on top and they get all of the questions. And so that's basically it. So there's a few problems with that. It sounds all great and wonderful because it is randomly allocated. Problem is it's Wi-Fi dependent because it's a Moodle quiz and because it's 1 attempt. You know, if they X out of that, and because it's open book, they're all over the internet, of course. If they X out of it, they've lost it. So I was constantly saying to them, you need to take a screenshot as soon as you get it, take a screenshot. But that's not sustainable. Someone's not going to pay attention, they're going to lose it, and then they've lost the opportunity. So if they click submit by mistake, it's not retrievable as well. So there was 2 big problems. And so my small change is going to make a big difference because that was a huge thing, you know. If they got a thunderstorm like we did the other day, like the whole thing is gone belly up. So the other problem I had was the tracking of the 6 hours. So as soon as they hit download, Moodle quiz doesn't help me. I can't really track it because I was giving them a different location for uploading. So it's a little bit messy. So what did I do? So I rang Sean Daffy. That's what you do when these things happen. Is he there? Hello, Sean. So I rang Sean Daffy. He says, why don't you try the group method? And I said, okay. So this actually works. This works nicely, mostly, is I divide the students into groups. But one of the things, and Sean helped me with this, is that you got to not let them see who's in whose group, because then they know, all the ones that are in A, I can connect with them. So I had to remove the student view of participants. So you know, this in the student view, there's participants on the left hand side, so I had to remove their viewing of other participants, so they would not know who's in whose group. So look, it's a bit neater. So there's a few settings there on the left hand side. It's only available at a certain time, and if you're in group 1, you get the first one, second one, third one, fourth one. So that's how I did it. A few nice things about it is that it looks much neater than a Moodle quiz. So it's all kind of fancy there. You know, it has the instructions at the front. It still has page 2, has a scenario. So everything looks good. So the good things about it is it's more accessible. So, you know, it's not going to get lost. As soon as they click download, they have it. So it's Wi-Fi friendlier, it's neater, and, you know, it's all things good, except there is still one thing, and we're back to Ita's comment there on continuous improvement, is that it's still manual tracking for me. So, Sean, I might just give you an shout there again, because I would like not to have to go, when do they download and do they upload within the 6 hour track. So I'll be on to you there next week, Sean, for another old chat. Yeah. So that's a small thing that's made a big difference. That's me. Trish, over to you.
Badly is the answer. Okay, so let me just get myself sorted out here. So first of all, apologies to all the presentations and stuff that I missed. Talk about being time poor. I spent from 9:30 this morning until just a few minutes ago at disciplinary committee. That was a laugh, I can tell you. And it plays very much into what Jan was talking about in terms of assessment and ChatGPT. And I've now learned about this thing called Zero GPT. Anywho, do I just click on here? Okay, so what I'm going to talk to you about is holistic authentic assessment. If nothing else, it sounds kind of good when you put the big words together, but let me go through it and try and explain it to you. So we'll talk about what I had then. When I inherited this module, Statistics Experimental Design is the name of the module, and just to put it in context, I come to this with about, even though I look so young, about 10 to 15 years of engineering experience in quality and quality engineering, process engineering. So I was like Ita said, talk about the guest lectures come in to give their experience. I'm like the guest that comes into your house and never leaves. So my module is a 10 credit year-long module, okay? And the way it breaks down in terms of the assessment is we have, or we used to have 30% coursework, which was CA, okay? So basically it was like 2 bits of CA there. And then we had a 70% formal exam, okay? Pretty boring, really. So that was then, and then I reimagined it, took plenty of psychotic drugs, etc., etc. And now what I have is this. Ta-da! This is my statistical experimental design 100% CA module. And as you can see, I've got my CPA, or my continuous improvement wheel, kind of rocking there. So as you can see at the very top there, what we have is a 20% basic stats theory exam. Okay, it's going to be a Moodle quiz. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then we bring it into number 2. There is a descriptive statistics practical. It's not one thing to know the theory, but it's another thing to see, can you actually implement it in practice? So what I do is, I'll explain again in a second, I give them a task to do, which will involve some critical thinking. They also have to be able to use Minitab statistical software, and they have to be able to use analytical skills and analytical thinking to interpret what they've got. Okay, so I'll explain a bit more about these now. Oh yeah, I should mention, if it's holistic, authentic assessment, I should probably just put in a few words about authentic, because my bosses here have told me I should mention UDL. So I am a great proponent for universal design for learning. I've been using it for more years than actually it's been a thing in ATU. What it's all about is, it's about a way of getting students to become their best selves in terms of learning. And the way we do it is by, this thing here is the case model. Some of you may be familiar with it. It talks about multiple means of engagement. So we want to try and get our students to be completely engaged with the module. Of course, it means the lecture, how could they not be? So what I do with them is I introduce stuff that they will find to be fun, entertaining, and really get them engaged. I also make my lectures kind of fun, as you can probably guess from the way I talk. Multiple means of representation is all about giving them content in ways that they can really work with, because we don't all learn the same. Okay, we all have different ways that we learn material. Some people are visual learners, some are oral, some are kinesthetic. So I try to play into all of their strengths by giving them a repertoire of information. So I do PowerPoint lectures, which I deliver live, but I also record for them as well. And I think that is something that they really like, because it means if something happens and some child falls or something, they can go off and attend to the child, but they can always catch up with me later because I've been recorded. I also do screencasts using multimedia, and they seem to like those. And I do videos, and I do, what else do? I do lots of things. I give them reading materials as well to get additional reading, that if they particularly find a topic interesting, there's more there for them to go and find out about. Because as Ita said, these are people who are working in industry who are actually trying to upskill themselves more often than not. Okay, so there might be something that they're doing in industry that they find is really, really useful, and they want to know a little bit more about that. Okay, so, and then I said, obviously the last part there is multiple means of activity, of action and expression. What that's all about is giving students multiple ways to represent what they've learned. So not just trying to pigeonhole them in that you must be able to write a 10,000 word thesis, or you must be able to produce an essay, because not all of us are good at writing essays. So when I talk about holistic, what was I talking about holistic? Yeah, I wanted to give my students a more integrated approach to evaluating their knowledge. So as I said, it's different. Students learn in different ways. They absorb a material in different ways. And I wanted to be able to make sure that I could evaluate that they had met the learning objectives of the module and give them different ways of doing it, a more holistic way of doing it. Now, the thing is, I think the previous approach is a little bit fragmented, where you've got a CA and you have a final exam, because it all kind of rides. 70% final exam means if you're having an off day, things can go rather badly. Okay, so my reimagined approach was, well, I like to think it was more cohesive. I should put that in quotes, really, more cohesive and more holistic. So what I was trying to do was take both the theory and the practical skills and kind of combine them together. And I did come up with this phrase, which I think is really good. I personally think it's really good. Integration better than fragmentation. Okay. So how I do it, this is more the nitty gritty of it all. In terms of the theory part A, like I said, the thing about teaching statistics and statistical theory is you can't be any way unequivocal about it. You have to know your theory. You either have it right or you have it wrong. Okay, so I give them a Moodle MCQ, multiple choice questions, and what I use is a very large question bank, which is pulled from all the material, all the technical stuff that they've learned in the lectures. And I have the question bank lined up for that. Then questions are given to them randomly, so no student gets the same set of questions as the next student. That also helps with what Marilla was talking about, was integrity and in terms of the assessment. Okay, so it's all randomized, so you will get different questions to the person sitting beside you. The questions are timed at 1.5 minutes per question, which is kind of quick, I suppose, but I think with statistics, you know it or you don't know it. Okay, and the good thing about it from the point of view of the student is, as soon as everyone has finished the MCQ, they immediately get their feedback. The feedback given to them will be both the grade that they get for it, it'll tell them what they got wrong, it'll tell them the right answers for what they got wrong. So there's a lot goes into that. It's the Moodle quiz, and it looks a bit like this. Okay, so just basically a series of questions, and took these screenshots from a particular student, can't remember which student now, but you can see there that they got them right, which is great. But as I said, the questions are written in such a way as when you're writing any type of MCQ, you will give it a right answer, an obvious wrong answer, and a couple of distractors. So it really does pull out whether or not they know their theory. That was part A. Am I okay for time? For part B, I wanted to assess their skill levels, because at the end of the day, if you're doing a module like statistics and experimental design, I don't want you to walk out the door just only knowing what a t-test is or what a paired t-test is. I want to know that you can apply what you've learned to your industrial situation. So what I do is I create authentic scenarios, and I suppose I'm lucky I can do that because I do have the industrial experience, like the guest who never leaves. So I give them things like taking information from a high volume process, and then they will have to pull a file. The file is listed at the very top there. They will pull a set of data, and they have to be able to work with that set of data. Here's what comes up next. So once they see the situation, they see the data set they have to be able to identify what issue are they trying to solve. So that's going to involve a bit of critical thinking. I mentioned that earlier, I know, but there you go. They will then have to decide on the appropriate statistical test to be able to get to the answer of what I have asked them to do. Okay, so that, and they have to conduct the test using Minitab statistical software, which is that one. And then, obviously, once you've run the test, the big thing, and it's the most important thing in statistics, is you have to be able to analyze and interpret your results. Okay, so they have to apply their analytical skills, their analytical thinking skills, and be able to come up with a result. And then they have to make an informed conclusion, and they are graded on their ability to do that. So I think from that point of view, it's more, I think it's a more true test of what these students can actually do. And I mean, there's another one there where you can see that they're talking about I don't even know what they're talking about. They're talking about a factorial experiment where they've got loads of factors, and those factors would be kind of familiar to them if you've come from a biopharm experience, whatever. So there's that. And then I decided I would just show you some student feedback, because every year I ask the students, how do you find it? So first one, CAs were fair, can't ask more than that, a good mix of knowledge and practical. This one said, good testing of theory in the MCQs, and the Minitab assessment was good at testing the ability to use the software. I enjoyed the practical CAs. They required some hands-on analysis with explanations. The MCQs were tough. I like to be tough, but fair. I like to be fair. Then we have the CAs felt fair and gave the opportunity to use my entire skill set. I enjoyed the balance of MCQs, labs, and the essay. And then the CAs were designed well. They tested both my knowledge and skill. I think that might be the last one. Oh no, the last one. CAs were designed very comprehensive. I swear to God, I did not write these. This comes directly from the students, and I can produce evidence of this. I found them good to test the knowledge and practical ability of the students, and that's ultimately what I was trying to do. Was I was trying to make sure that I have these students. They now go out of the college with my stamp of approval on the back of their neck. They understand statistics, and they can actually go out into their industry and they can do it. I think that's me done. That is me done.
Okay, so back to our assessment practices, and this is the document that we have shared with our program team, where everybody, I mentioned it earlier, noted their delivery this year and their type of assessment. So we discovered there's a lot of assessments located during week 8 to 10, and we've already discussed that with the board. Assessments vary from on campus to online to others, and as Trish mentioned there, almost all of our lecturing team have industrial experience, or you might call us mature lecturing. We came to lecturing maybe after maybe a career in industry, and so a lot of the assignments and assessments can be based around very practical scenarios, and I suppose that is one of the reasons why we're able to communicate and relate well perhaps to the students' situations, but of course we're always learning from them as well when they present us with protocols and scenarios and problems and issues that occur at work. But anyway, the assessments vary. There's a lot of presentation as part of assessment, and this is good. There's quite a lot of teamwork, but it is one of our program outcomes is that people would be able to work as part of teams, work as part together and learn presentation skills, because these are vital skills for working. Some elements of cross-module assessment practices are underway at the moment, and these are very successful, and we'd like to explore that a little bit more. So what are we doing next? We're going to further digest that table alongside our evaluations from this year with students and our feedback from them, and also feedback from lecturers on their the overall experience of the year. Try to rebalance that assessment load between weeks 8 and 10 and look at other opportunities for cross-module assessment, those kind of opportunities. And we're looking forward to exploring how we can, I suppose, incorporate the presence and influence of AI, and having seen that presentation today, that short presentation actually was great today, and looking forward to doing the workshops in that and looking more at that. And of course, continuous improvement. We're bound to go down some other path next year, some of us on the team, because it just seems to be part of what we do. So thank you very much. If you have any questions for any of us, we'd be delighted to answer. Thank you, Emma. Any questions, anybody, or comments or anything? Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Do you think they come out a better student, a better understanding? Do you think they've got stats better now that they're 100% CA?
Sheer panic pressure. We've all done exams. I take exams last minute, cram. I only remember the time I had a chemistry book and if I could do 20 chapters in one night to actually pass the exam. By some miracle, I did pass it. So I think we're better off not traumatizing students by getting them to try and learn everything the night before. If you can chunk it up, I think it works better. Now, having said that, it is probably a little bit easier for a student because the cognitive load is less. So that's a good thing. But I'm happy, very, very happy with this module. The students excel. They do really well in it. I think the average mark this year was probably about 72%, but if you could correct me on that. Does that answer your question?
Would you think like they're kind of say out working, the more vested in it than rocked up kind of off?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that would work for the rocked up students, so to speak?
That's the reason I absolutely adore teaching this class, I will be honest, is because they are mature and they're switched on and they realize the value of an education to them. They may have missed the boat some stage earlier in their career, but now they see it in terms of if you want to progress, like in Medtronic and Boston, you have to have a level 6 to be in any chance to get a promotion. And these students definitely see the value of the education. So they're totally switched on, totally committed. Whereas, let's face it, my undergraduate students, some of them are switched on, not very brightly.
And so would you do the 100% CA for the undergraduate students?
I have done in some modules, and to be honest with you, it's interesting they don't all pass. Like I have a module which is 100% CA, and I divided it up as 2 theoretical CAs for maths, which is 2 CA1, CA2, 30% each, and then they have to do an Excel exam, which is 30% each, because again, I'm combining the skills and theory together, and they do fail because they're not switched on, they're not invested enough. And I mean, I say to them at the very beginning that some of you in this class, it's about 110 in the class, some of you are going to fail if you do not work with me. And they don't. They think that they can just literally turn it on last minute.
Lovely, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you everybody very much. Just on behalf of the Teaching and Learning Centre of ATU, I'm Noelle Higgins from ATU Galway Mayo. I would just like to thank everybody so much for their contributions today. Lots to think about, lots to reflect on, and I'm sure there'll be lots of practices changing as a result of discussions we had today. So we'd like to invite you all to a little networking lunch we have outside prepared for you. But before we do that, I would just like to thank everybody so much for their contributions for today during the whole day, especially the programme leads, the academic leads who gave such wonderful presentations on their work over the last little while. Also, obviously, thank you to our own learning technologists who gave a wonderful presentation on ChatGPT. Well done, and Kevin, who's been busy recording there at the back of the room. Thank you so much also to Emma, obviously, who's inspired all of this and got everybody here today. But a very, very special thanks to Dr. Jan MacArthur for her wonderful and inspiring keynote presentation. I'm sure it gave us all an awful lot to think about and was so wonderful and insightful and informative. So thank you all very much, as well as to our funder, Sattel, who made all of this possible, National Forum as well, and NTutor. So thank you all very much, and please join us all for tea and coffee and some sandwiches outside. Thank you.